Hey everybody, this is Cody 922 here. Welcome to Cody Talks Fandom episode number 38. And this episode is going to be continuing on in the fanon interpretations episode. Before I begin, I am going to shoot out a quick reminder of the next interview being with Miss Nerdgasms. So if you have any questions for Lex, please do leave them in the comments below. A lot of really fun comics have spawned from Lex, and I just, I'm really looking forward. I say this every single time. I'm really looking forward to it, but please do leave any questions that you have in the comments below. And onward to this next episode. This is going to be finished up Team RWBY, which means that actually the only full team that I have in my schedule is complete. And up next, we're going to be moving on to JNPR, the two members that I have of JNPR, starting with their leader, the ever so... I don't know what word I was going to use there. I started with the ever so, but don't have everything to follow up with, but the leader of Team JNPR, Jaune Arc. So this will be the fan interpretation episode for him. So Jaune in general, this is actually the episode that I may have been looking forward to the most, because this guy is he's one of the more intriguing characters to look at from a fanon versus canon interpretation. So let's talk about I'm going to go back to Volume 1 to begin this with. So Jaune in Volume 1 was really he was interesting character. So he started off, he was comic relief. He was the audience insert, right? He was the guy that we used to have everything explained to us. He was the audience insert, comic relief. But when push came to shove, he really kind of acted as the shield. Was the one that took up a lot of damage, was a tactician. Really, that was Jaune in Volume 1. That was really the big thing for him too, was that he was a tactician above all else. He wasn't really a frontal fighter. He was, I'm there and I will come up with the ideas and I'll absorb damage, because he viewed himself as the least valuable member. And he proved multiple times, he had the one moments where he should have done, where there were certain things that he could have done in there, like, ask for help that he didn't do. So that kind of, he was interesting in Volume 1. So basically in Volume 1, he really, when it came to his own arc, he started off by admitting that he cheated, which was not a comic relief moment. It was a screw up moment, but it wasn't in a comic relief way, which is really what we had grown more accustomed to with Jaune. And then after that, he doesn't ask for help, and time kind of goes on like that for a little bit until, he does something, or Pyrrha helps him out a little bit, doesn't tell him. And time continues onwards for Jaune and for this character. He really, after that, he did something for Cardin. And I think that was kind of the big moment there, was just another glimpse into Jaune's personality. Is he's not going to leave people behind. He's not just going to leave them to die. He did help out Cardin. He then furthered on with, after helping out Cardin, Jaune, what's the word I'm looking for here? Pyrrha did help him. Pyrrha did keep him alive, but it was kind of like just a moment of, Jaune will not, even though Cardin kind of, was a bully, he's still not going to just leave him be, and he's going to make sure that, Cardin knows, hey, don't fuck with my friends. Beyond that, we'll be okay. So that was kind of an interesting moment for Jaune. Very much so, kind of a goofball screw up, but still had moments where he generally did care about other people, where he did try and do the right thing by other people. And, it was an interesting moment in Volume 1. So that was canon Jaune. That's what I refer to as canon Jaune. Within the fanon of Volume 1, the fanon version of Jaune, what more often than not you would see, that was not the case. Not this screw up goofball kind of a guy. He was like, oh, we'll start him as this, but then eventually he's just going to get stronger and stronger, and he's going to become like the best fighter, and he's going to be really good with people, and He's gonna, you know, have this, and this happen for him, happen in favor of him. And that kind of was what you saw in the fanon of Jaune, was this character who was liked because he was relatable. Suddenly they took away the qualities that made him relatable. That was really what became the prevalent fanon Jaune. And above fanon, the way that I refer to it is fanfiction Jaune. This was the Jaune that appeared in fanfiction. So he and that's how I refer to it, right? As fanfiction Jaune versus canon Jaune. And I did not like fanfiction Jaune all that much because I did not feel as though obviously it was very accurate to the character. Time passes, volume 2 comes along. And fanfiction Jaune and canon Jaune are both still extremely prevalent. But where are they prevalent? Fanfiction Jaune was very, very prevalent and very, very potent within the canon. And canon Jaune became more so prevalent within the fandom. So those two kind of flipped. They've never once what has been the real prevalent version of Jaune, you know, in terms of like what kinds of the things it was, that's been consistent. That's been you know, that hasn't really wavered too much. But like the actual character, when it's reflected in which one, that has not remained consistent. That's never actually lined up. And I thought that this was very, very interesting because like I said, I did not like the fanfiction Jaune because I didn't think it was accurate to Jaune. I felt as though it took away from what made the character likable, maybe not likable to some people, but I felt as though it took away from what made the character the character. Like what made Jaune really was taken away through what people wanted to do with him. And I thought that was strange. And then come volume 2, they kind of did the same thing where Jaune kind of was a little bit of a itsy bitsy little bit of a fuckboy. With the whole, the prom arc, you know, really when the prom arc, that did more harm for every character involved than it did good. I think in terms of characterization, there was a lot of regression for Jaune in terms of character development when volume 2 came around. There was a lot of problems with Jaune in volume 2, I think anyways, because it didn't remain consistent with what we had learned in volume 1. And the whole Weiss thing was, you know, I maintain on a, you know, personal feelings level, there's one way to say no, there's one way to take no. And Weiss did her part, Jaune didn't do his part. And that really kind of didn't show the Jaune that we'd become, the Jaune that was first demonstrated in volume 1. The Jaune that was, I care about my friends and I'm going to listen to them, I'm going to do what I can for them. It became a Jaune that was more so along the lines of fulfilling his wants, which is something that was very prevalent in fanfiction Jaune, not canon Jaune. So that was interesting. That to me was very interesting, is the fact that we don't have, Jaune has been on camera for so much and we don't have really this a very developed character at all because characters have been taken away from stuff. And as a result, that reflects in the fanon interpretation. But except for the part where the fanon interpretation of him isn't consistent either. Where Jaune they just can't get it, where it's just, they never line up. And it's the damnedest thing. It is the absolutely damnedest thing. Jaune is just one of those characters that just hasn't been done right. Similar to Yang, from that regards, just very different reasonings for why Jaune hasn't been done right yet. And the reasoning in this case is just because people are trying to do too much with him, whether it is, you know, it's just, you need to stop and you need to evaluate. I've seen a couple of versions of Jaune that I have liked. There was the Jaune that appeared in the Rending trilogy, where lot of strength, lot of aura. We know that from the canon. A lot of strength, a lot of aura. Doesn't really know how to control it very well. His handle on it is lackluster, to say the least. So you know, that kind of results in problems and whatnot. And that's that Jaune. That's an older Jaune, by the way. That's a more developed Jaune. So, you know, this kind of like I love the idea of just like this just loose outlet Jaune, or this like electrical line Jaune, where it needs something else to direct him. And if he doesn't have that, well, it gets kind of bad. I love that idea of a Jaune. I love, there have been other versions of Jaune where it's just kind of like strong leader, confident, where like as time goes on becomes a very strong leader and confident, just because experience. I like that. I like the idea of that Jaune as well. But really, you know, what we see from Jaune more often than not is not that. And I think it's aggravating. I'm going to use that word, because there's no real reason to do it the way that it gets done, other than you can. Like, that's literally the only reason. So Jaune's an just a really, really, really interesting character. You know, I haven't read a Jaune story in a while, like a Jaune-centered story in a while. Those fics were kind of ruined for me. Like they just after reading a couple of them, I'm like, I'm done. Like I don't want to read this anymore. So I will be 100% honest. I haven't read that many as of late. I do still follow along with what the interpretations of them are. It seems as though things are getting more attuned to canon Jaune from volume 1. Very, very it's pretty strange. I'll end with that in terms of that. So I brought up the one Jaune that I liked. I cannot think of the name of the author right now of that story, but I think that he did a good job with it. I think that there probably been other people who have done a good job, but like I said, there's really no standout in my mind. People who write Jaune-centered stories that I've read, no real standout there either. In terms of shipping, really the kind of shipping dynamic with Jaune is that you need somebody that will guide Jaune. This is a character that needs a lot of guidance, that needs reassurance as well. I mean, there are definitely things about Jaune that, you know, it needs. Okay, so when I say reassurance, I mean reassurance from an emotional standpoint. Somebody that is like, hey, I'm here, don't worry about it, you know, I'm not going anywhere. You need somebody kind of like that, which is why undoubtedly the most popular ship with Jaune is Arcos. Arcos is a huge ship for that one. It's one of the bigger ships, or it was one of the bigger ships in the fandom. I think its popularity kind of died out a little bit. In terms of other popular ships for Jaune, really, Arcos is kind of it in terms of things that really stand out. So to make a list of the top 3 is tough. I'm gonna do my best. I know that John Blake. I've heard it called Awkward Kitty. That one's fairly popular from what I've seen, like as far as crack ships go, and you know, really White Knight is surprisingly not popular. Not surprisingly not popular. I'm not gonna phrase it that way, but just for all of like the canon interaction that we've had between the two of them, and while yes, it's not necessarily leading in like a good direction. For all the canon interaction that we've gotten between the two of them, it definitely is interesting to me that that might not be a more popular ship, but just because of the way that this fandom works, but I don't doubt it. So it's surprisingly not that popular. I'd honestly say that Awkward Kitty would be more popular than that. And really, I mean, Jean Cardin in terms of niche, but I haven't even really seen much of that. I haven't really. What you see is the occasional White Knight, the occasional RWBY Jean. That's been kind of agreed upon to just do that one a little bit more platonically. So yeah, he's interesting. Because there isn't really that many people that people want to ship Jaune with. And I think that's partially due to the inconsistencies. If you really don't have a clear vision of this character, a clear and concise vision of a character, you're not going to be able to ship them with that many people because you need something a little bit more clear. And I think that really my top 3 for this one, honestly, probably would wind up being top 3 in terms of popularity. Would honestly probably wind up being Awkward Kitty, White Knight, and Arcos. That's like, and then it's just like 95% Arcos, and then like 2% everything else. In terms of cosplays, I did not mention those. Really just kind of scroll through the thing. There's been a couple Jaunes and dresses that have come out. There have been some fun cosplays, but really kind of nothing. I'm gonna double check my list real fast. I'm not gonna put my foot in my mouth. Yeah, okay. I don't have anything marked down as like standout that comes to mind immediately. There was the Battlefield 4 AU. There was that Jaune. Really like that Jaune. So definitely, yeah. There's a lot of work that has to be done with Jaune from a fanon standpoint. People need to kind of figure things out a little bit more with him. And that hasn't been done yet. And it's it's interesting to me just because this is a character that's very inconsistent as far as canon goes, and it's very inconsistent as far as fanon goes. But I think that the direction that they were trying to take it at first needs to be the direction that we stick with, because Volume 2 Jaune was a little bit of a fuckboy. I mean, I'll admit that, using Riot's words in that case, but there's a lot of things that need to be sorted out with Jaune. But beyond that, that is going to conclude this episode of Cody Talks Fandom. The interview will be taking place with Lex on Saturday. Please do leave any questions that you have for her in the comments below, or in the comments of the last video, or you can message me on Tumblr. Just get them to me in a retrievable manner. Coming as of, I have an announcement that will be coming soon. I believe it will be done. Yeah. You'll most likely hear about it either the 6th or the 7th, but the announcement is coming soon. So have that to look forward to. I'm very excited about that particular announcement. It's about a direction I'm going to be taking the show. 6th to 7th of May, by the way, just in case you were confused. Tune in the next time when I will have out new content. Tune in the next time in this show when it will be the interview with Lex. But beyond that, I will see all of you the next time. Bye.